Now the whole earth had one language and one speech. And it came to pass as they journeyed from the east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. Then they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly." They had brick for stone, and they had asphalt for mortar. And they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city, and a tower whose top is in the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth." But the Lord came down to see the city, and the tower which the sons of men had built. And the Lord said, "Indeed, the people are one, and they all have one language, and this is what they begin to do. Now nothing that they propose to do will be withheld from them. Come, let us go down, and there confuse their language, that they may not understand one another's speech." So the Lord scattered them abroad from there over the face of all the earth, and they ceased building the city. Therefore its name is called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth, and from there the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of all the earth. Genesis 11, 1-9. Many are perhaps familiar with the biblical story of the Tower of Babel. Mankind, without any cultural, or more specifically lingual, distinction, was able to amalgamate its efforts and construct a tower so grand that its endpoint would reach the heavens. God, understanding the arrogance of man, recognized the grave danger that this development presented. If all men were able to communicate freely, they would be capable of anything, or rather, more along the lines of how it was written, nothing that they propose to do will be withheld from them. Consequently, God knocks man down a peg. He is divided, both in his tongue and geography. He is scattered abroad in different lands, uttering distinct tongues, and left capable of communicating only with those who share in these traits. Babel represents man's futile attempt to do the impossible, to touch the transcendent without relying upon it in order to do so, to reach it merely through man's own efforts. It is humanity's attempt to achieve the status of what is transcendent without requiring the guiding hand of the transcendent being in order to do so. So man is divided. He is humbled and reminded of the reality of his status as a mortal being, made to remember that he exists under the thumb of God. And while the Tower of Babel represented a weakening of man's collective strength, it was ultimately for the sake of its betterment that the event unfolded. Man, now scattered, was grouped together with those who inhabited the same region and uttered the same tongue, descended from the same lineage. Each group would then develop its unique identity, culture, and norms. Some groups would excel at certain things, while other groups would achieve success in other respects. God had taken the static, homogenized world and fragmented it into one teeming with variety, featuring an array of unique peoples, languages, and cultures. In the city of God, St. Augustine writes in regard to the Tower of Babel, "Thus was that conspiracy disbanded, for each man retired from those he could not understand, and associated with those whose speech was intelligible, and the nations were divided according to their languages, and scattered over the earth as seemed good to God." Augustine, therefore, explains the scattering of man as a blessing, rather than a curse. God is the objective, all-knowing, and purely good being, and because God willed for man to be split into unique groups, occupying separate lands and speaking different languages, it is good. But of what significance is Genesis 11 in its ostensible emphasis on man's distinctions, explaining the differences in his language, land, and by extent, lineage with such heavy metaphysical weight in reference to our modern-day milieu? And to this question, there exists an apparent answer. The Tower of Babel can be best understood through our modern-day lens as analogous to the growing specter of internationalism. Man's attempt to homogenize the world and to render individuals interchangeable regardless of sexual, ethnic, lingual, cultural, or religious differences. Essential to internationalism, too, is the elevation of capital beyond the nation-state and its borders, which actively destroys the first world in both a deeply ontological level through the replacement of their historic in-groups with distinctly foreign peoples, and materially through the death of its industry, which is offshored to the third world for the sake of labor costs. And therefore, the third world too is ravaged, though in a much more material manner through worker exploitation in the process. While the objective of internationalism is not intently metaphysical, continuous economic growth, reducing labor expenses, and so on, it can be clearly contrasted with the deeply metaphysical and spiritual aspiration of Babel to reach the heavens. Internationalism nonetheless reveals itself as man's attempt to revert to his pre-Babel state, to flatten humanity and eliminate the distinctions that hinder this regression. It is man's attempt to abolish the traits that mark his particularity, not for some transcendent purpose, but for the sake of an economic apotheosis, a level of material prosperity that holds an almost metaphysical allure. The erasure of metaphysical distinctions showcases this. It is a level of success, of interdependence, that internationalism finds so desirable that it is willing to go about obliterating distinctions with such metaphysical weight. Klaus Schwab, the founder of the World Economic Forum, has made this more or less clear, stating, "One new reality is global interconnectivity and the fact that all challenges must be addressed on the basis of togetherness. Thus, the most crucial factor, and I want to emphasize this end part, in accepting the new reality and confronting its opportunities and risks is our willingness to develop shared norms on all levels." The objective of reaching this so-called new reality of global interconnectivity, of an interconnected world order, is elevated to such an echelon that all of humanity's norms, or as Schwab himself says, norms on all levels, must become shared. This, of course, naturally implies the dissolution of the heterogeneous state of norms that have defined humanity's uniqueness, the difference in its heritage, religion, language, philosophy, and so on, in favor of reverting back to a state of universal homogeneity, of similarity in respect to all these norms. And the depraved obsession with this goal, on the part of internationalists, globalists, and the rest, is only demonstrated by their disregard for the untenability of such efforts. No matter the dysfunctionality that arises through mass immigration, the swell of crime that it causes, or the adversity that it causes the native-born peoples of Western nations, and the discontentment that they subsequently express come election season, the goal of global interconnectivity and the flattening of humanity continues to be advanced, regardless of its contradictions being exposed in real time. Like Babel, man will always differ from one another, whether by tongue, lineage, or custom, and this is a reality that cannot simply be dealt away with, regardless of how vigorous the efforts of some to do so may be.